Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast. Proudly sponsored by Convergent Technology.
Hello, I'm Mark Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the pleasure of Jo Feldman, the Chief Commercial Officer of I'm going to pronounce this right actually, Jo, UBDS.
UBDS. Yes.
How are we doing?
I'm very well, thank you. You?
Yeah, I'm
Thank
pretty
you
good.
for having me.
Thank you for coming in, because we have met before
Yep.
when you were in London. So thanks so much for coming in. So Jo, wanted to get you into the studio because your career is, I think, what most people in sales, when they especially go into sales, would love to emulate, because you started in a role in lead gen. Now, most people, when they actually come into us, they're actually trying to get into sales, their sales career. They have to start in lead gen. It's not a great job. It's a hard job to get in. So I was hoping you could share some of the insights with the listeners, how you actually started your career. Because when you were doing lead gen, you obviously never thought you'd ever get to a chief exec role, did you? Or what was your career?
Yeah, I did. Not,
You did?
Not chief exec role, but it's always a plan.
Really? Was that?
Yeah. No, I always wanted to lead a business. So that was always the plan. I knew it was going to take a lot of time. It wasn't necessary. It was the goal I was always searching for, but I broke down my goal into snippets of things that I could achieve to get me there ultimately.
Why did you choose technology?
I didn't. Technology chose me. So like most of us, really. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I went to university. It didn't really work out. I came out of university. I was playing a game of rugby. I came off the pitch. I was in the players' bar afterwards, and I was chatting to a guy, and he just started a business selling Cisco solutions, and he was there with his wife, and I was chatting to him, had a great discussion. He said, "Have you ever thought about sales?" So I hadn't, and went and had a chat, and that was that.
So at that point in your career, you never sort of had any aspirations to do anything else? You sort of fell into sales?
No, yeah, I literally fell into it. Yeah, just on a 10-minute discussion. He was looking for young people that could go on and have the right attitude and personability and all those raw materials that make up a good salesperson. He saw those, lucky enough, in me. I went in, I knew nothing about technology, and went and had a discussion and gave it a go. And
how long did you do lead gen for?
I'm still doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true. You never get away from it, and I enjoy it. I love it. Yeah, I was saying to you earlier, I had 9 customer meetings on Friday. So I'm in the thick of it at the moment, and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, at that point, it was all new. And
because most lead gen people don't get the excitement doing any of the meetings of customer service, the customer meeting. They actually just get to sort of arrange the meeting, and someone else does the glory bit. So how did you find that when you first started out? So obviously lots of cold calling, I guess, proactive.
Loads of cold calling. So yeah, we had a CRM, embryonic CRM on a big PC called SuperOffice, and I remember. So it was all. I've always, and I still believe it, there's a direct correlation between high performance and high activity. Smarter activity now than it was before, but still high activity. So we had a target that we had like a book, and each book had a line on it. And if you filled out the book, that was about 60 calls in a day, 70 calls in a day. So I thought, right, if everyone else around me are doing that many calls in a day, I'm going to double up. So I'm going to do 2 calls on every line. So I'm going to try and do about 140, 120, 140 calls a day. And I wouldn't let myself go to lunch until I'd done one level. So I'd done a day's work of everyone else, and then I'd go to lunch, and then I'd come back and do another day. So with the idea that I'm doing double the amount of work, so I should get double the amount of opportunity and double the amount of result.
Do you think that has been lost a bit nowadays? Yeah. Because I've come from a similar background. I had to make lots of calls, and I'd almost have the point where I said, right, I've got to do 10 decision makers before lunch, and I'd tick them off before I did it.
Yep, did that.
Now I don't see that. So I hear a lot of companies now saying, we don't have KPIs. Obviously, we don't micromanage people. We don't monitor calls. We use maybe activities to monitor people, but we like to let people do what they want, which is great. In fact, I have that culture here myself a bit, but I do feel that the activity, you said about the high activity, has been lost a bit, i.e. lots of people, and I don't think a lot of people are that driven to do those calls before lunchtime. I think it's almost like, I'll mould to the culture and I'll get away with what I can. Yes, they'd like to hit their target, but it doesn't really matter now. Now, maybe it's just my age. I don't know. Maybe I've come from a culture that is maybe a bit more boiler room. But what do you think is sort of driven that? Because especially during COVID now, it's even more prevalent that people can basically do what they want around hybrid working and work what hours they want, almost do what activity they want. So how do you feel about driving performance with that?
Yeah, so driving performance, it's funny. So back in the day when I was doing it, I wasn't told to do it. There was a bit of that, but there was a culture in that you wanted to do it.
Right.
So like we was talking about earlier, the answer came from within. So I believed in it. I made the decision that I wanted to do that. So I committed to it 100%, and I wanted to win. I'm hugely competitive. What's changed since then to now? I think there is generally a different attitude, but the market's also changed as well. So end decision makers are less likely to pick up the phone to a cold call. They're less accessible. They're more accessible across multiple things. So activity now isn't about. In those days, it was just calling. There was no LinkedIn. There was no social selling. There was a bit of vendor work. So we'd work with Cisco back in those days. Now it's a lot different. So you can still do the same amount of activity, but across multiple platforms. And you don't necessarily. It's harder to manage or measure.
How would someone grab your attention? So, for instance, you said to me today, you've turned up, 20 emails, Friday, 9 meetings. You are flat out all the time.
Yeah.
How would a prospect, and obviously not giving away all the secrets, but how would a prospect get hold of you? Because it can't be just sending you a message and saying, hoping you're going to call up, because you're not going to call back.
No, that's the best way to get. That is the best way to get hold of me.
Message.
I'm not joking. Yeah. If I'm always on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn, I've got alerts. If someone sent me a really good thought out message where they'd looked at the organisation, where they'd looked at me, and they put something together that was thought out, relevant, and that meant something to me, then I would absolutely give them the time of day.
Really?
Well, 100%. Because those attributes are the things that I'm looking for all the time. So that's some of the stuff that's gone missing in today's market.
So if it was a personal message that was thought out and then they'd sort of...
Well planned, thought out, using my language, using my references, maybe they've got a connection in common with me, I would 100% reply.
Really?
Without question.
Let's go back to your career. So as we went to lead gen, you've obviously moved up to career. You took a sales role. Talk to me about your first sort of sales role with a number.
Yeah, so as soon as I got there. So I went into lead gen. That was with a number, but it was an activity target, really. So it was about, you mentioned how many decision makers. So I've made the calls I said I'd make. But I had to essentially get 9 hits, which was a conversation in the morning, 9 hits, which was a conversation in the afternoon, and then at least 2 opportunities a day. And then
you took a revenue number after that. I
took a margin number after that. Yeah. So like, I think it's still the same now. Performance high performance gets you to the next stage.
Yeah.
So it's up to us as salespeople. We predetermine how long it takes us to get to whether it's a promotion or a new business. For me, it was quite a quick step into sales. So I was given a margin target, and effectively what I was doing was I was booking meetings for other people. So I just said, do you mind if I come to this one? And I just started pushing my own agenda. And I went and I added a bit one time, and then I added 2 bits or 3 bits. And by the end of it, I was handling the meeting and then handling more and more and more of the sales cycle.
Do you think that's important for if people want to get promoted to almost push themselves? Because I see a lot of people, especially throughout the IT channel, that they're in roles and they'll come to me and they'll say, oh, I haven't got recognised for promotion, or there's not an opportunity, or I haven't got an opportunity to go to the next step without self-promoting. We talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
Self-promotion, egotistical maniac. Where is the balance?
I struggle with the balance.
Yeah. Where is it? Because you have got to push yourself into the next role. Otherwise, you won't get an opportunity, will you? So
you have, and it's funny. The examples you gave me there were all entitled. So I haven't got this, or no one's given me that, or It's like the common theme there is people waiting to be given something. Yeah. And if you want something, you've got to take it. If you want a job, you just start doing the job, and you'll get the job.
Do you think throughout your career, obviously you went into management?
Yeah.
How did you sort of like start asking for that job? Because there's a big difference between being a successful contributor and going into management. So how did you plan that?
I didn't. So that organisation, it found me again. So that organisation, was my first business. It was selling Cisco networking, Cisco collaboration, IP telephony at the time, and we sold the organisation. So we sold it in 2008. We sold it to Capita, and that was great back in 2008. And that was my up till that point. I'd never wanted to go into management because I was top sales guy. I had all our house accounts. I was in my early 20s. I was earning great money.
Balling.
I was sort of the master of my own destiny.
Yeah.
And why would I want to move into management at that stage?
Yeah.
But when the acquisition happened, that gave me an opportunity to go from something that was turning over 29.6 million at the time, and we had 65 staff, into going into something that was 45,000 people and £5 billion. And the opportunity presented itself to take over the Southern commercial team within Capita. At that point, they were really highly acquisitive, so it was a really fast-paced organisation, but completely rudderless. So they were buying, if you remember, they were buying lots and lots of different businesses that sold lots of different stuff, and then created sort of Frankenstein's monster out of it all. So that was my first opportunity to take some management and see how I got on. And yeah, it worked out.
When you were a biller, what traits do you think makes a really good biller? Because I look at people now and they're sort of, you mentioned there, some of the house accounts you've got, and sometimes by luck, with people leaving, you ended up leaving with some really good accounts.
Yeah.
What do you think the natural traits of a good? You make your own luck.
You make your own luck because you don't get given those accounts unless you're really high achieving. So I've in the teams I've managed over the last 15 odd years, I've had members of my team leave. Who do you think the best accounts go to? They go to the people with the right attitude, that represent the business in the right way, that are going to deliver an amazing service back to them and get some business. We're a commercial entity, right? So you make your own life. You don't just they're not just divvied out.
So what sort of natural traits do you look for? If you're looking for top salespeople, and then you're hiring someone, and you've hired them, what traits do you look for when you're
resilient? Definitely, positive first and foremost. Positive mindset. Everything. Even critical moments or tough moments have to be delivered with positive intent. I think resilience, definitely, because as salespeople, we deal with rejection more than we deal with anything. So it's a tough gig for that. So if people haven't got that resilience about them, they tend to fail, unfortunately. And then people that are just self-motivated. I'm not a massive fan of motivation. I don't think it almost exists. I think motivation is something that's intrinsic, and I believe much more in discipline. So like the thing that I was talking about earlier on, where I wouldn't let myself go to lunch until I've made those calls. That was my discipline that did that. I wasn't motivated to do it by anyone. No one can tell me and inspire me that much to make those calls. So I think it's people that are disciplined, that have that sort of laser guided focus.
Did you bring that discipline into when you went into management then? Was that the same sort of traits that you...
No, so because I brought the self-discipline in, 1,000,000%. I don't think it ever leaves you. You either are or you're not. But I don't project that discipline onto the people that I manage.
Right.
Because I think that's again, talking about the answer coming from within. I try and create a culture and I try and inspire people to have that discipline, bring that themselves.
So what sort of manager were you when you first went into it? Have you changed your management style over the years?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, for a number of reasons. One is the different people that you manage. Two is the market and the way that the market has changed exponentially over that period of time. And the different platforms that we use and the way that we measure stuff and the way that, especially now over the last few years, that now we've got this distributed workforce where you don't see everyone every day for 9-10 hours a day. So you have to change with the times, really. Yeah.
How have you found that in juggling your own workforce? I know you mentioned you were managing sort of externals before, and they're probably home working occasionally. But with now the culture of hybrid working and a lot of people working completely at home a lot now, how have you found that? And in terms of actually managing your style and actually managing, because to create a culture now, when I hear about culture and I hear companies talk about it. We've got a great culture, etc. What are you doing? We're all working from home. It's like, I just don't buy that. I don't buy that there's a great culture. I look at someone like Softcat and I could see why they had a great culture in their office. Do I see that they've been able to maintain that great culture? I don't think so. I think it's been very difficult for them and other companies that have got home working. How have you found it in terms of actually still creating that culture?
Yeah, in response to COVID, very difficult.
Yeah.
So I'm on complete same wavelength as you. I don't think that culture can be delivered or created virtually.
No.
I think it's too manufactured. I believe in discretionary effort. So in order to get the output and that discipline and that work ethic and people buying into an organisation and the purpose and the values and the mission of that business, you have to be around each other. Because, like I said to you earlier, working all weekend, I didn't work all weekend because I wanted to. I did it to help out my teammates. And I only got to know my teammates from being with them and around them and understanding what their families are about and understanding how they tick, and they help me out as well. So that's an amazing culture. That's what unlocks the discretionary effort. So, i.e. the difference between having to do something and wanting to do something.
I mentioned to you before about over the last sort of 2 or 3 years as COVID's happened, there's been, and I won't go into the Great Resignation, but there's been a lot of people that have looked at their careers and then thought, I needed a job because they couldn't get a job. But there's been a lot of people that have been very successful in their jobs and then suddenly thought, you know what, I don't like this organisation. When you consider moving, and I know you've moved a few times, what do you look for? Because I mentioned to you earlier at lunch about, yes, there's a job, but maybe there's I might be able to get an exit or maybe a share. So how do you evaluate jobs, and how do you sort of think people should evaluate jobs when they're currently in jobs?
So when they're in a job, so first and foremost, I think you need to make the decision that the current one that you're in isn't right, because otherwise everything else is a distraction. So if the opportunity that you're involved with at that time isn't either right for you or you're not right for it, and there needs to be a change, I think you just invariably know. I think that's just something that comes to you, and you should trust your instincts and your gut. Once you've made the decision that you should go, because I've never gone for another opportunity, so I've never been headhunted out and been extracted from a business for another opportunity, because I'm so bought in usually to the organisation that I'm a part of. That said, once you've made that decision, you just go and look at the market and you look at what does the market need, what are the trends in the marketplace, maybe look at some analyst stuff, and you think what's next and what's next. So I like I said to you earlier, when I made the decision, when I left Ideal and I was making the decision about what my next role was, which turned out to be UBDS, I wasn't necessarily just thinking about UBDS. And the reason being was when I was interviewing with other businesses, it was really it surprised me how many organisations actually through the interview process were asking me about A&S and not Ideal. And the reason they were asking me about A&S was because A&S was much more relevant with what the market's doing and the way that the market's shifting into digital services and cloud and managed services, etc. Whereas Ideal, whilst a great business in their own right, weren't as relevant in today's digital market.
Yeah, let's talk about your A&S, because obviously you joined them. They didn't have, I don't think they had a London presence, and you were brought in to do that. So what was your remit? How did Paul sort of sell it to you to get join?
Yeah, so it wasn't Shannon at the time.
It wasn't Shannon,
Sweeney. Paul Sweeney.
Paul Sweeney.
So I chose that was, well, I exited Capita. Yep. So I'd done my thing at ABS, 65 people. 45,000 people, got a good promotion there. So I went from the south to the whole of the UK, which is great. And then Capita, I'd made the decision that I wanted to leave first and foremost, right? And the reason was because at that point, Capita was a really tough place to be. And I had staff left, right and centre wanting to leave. And so I morphed into sales leadership into this somewhere between HR and counsellor, where I was sticking my arm around people all the time saying, please don't leave. And I'd had enough, and I'd learned what I needed to learn from those big monolithic
Why they
businesses.
had enough? What was it about the culture?
They'd had enough because they were trying to... I'm all for playing in position. So if you're a Cisco person, you should sell Cisco. If you're a Microsoft person, sell Microsoft. If you're, and stay in your lane and just execute brilliantly. Yeah. What they were doing is they'd bought Apple businesses, they'd bought Avaya businesses, Cisco businesses, and they made all those salespeople generalists, and they targeted them to sell everything. And if you ask a Cisco person to sell iPads, they become disenfranchised. Well. Yeah. It's just that you just ask them to do something they're not. And salespeople stay within the comfort zone. They follow the path of least resistance. If you give them a number, they want to hit the number, but they're only going to hit the number selling the stuff they know how to sell. So it becomes this dichotomy. So that they all started leaving, and that wasn't an environment or a culture that I wanted to be part of anymore. So I'd made the decision that I wanted to go, and that's when A&S got in touch. And Sweeney, I met Sweeney, and I think his first question was, "What's your favourite music?" or "What's your favourite band?" I think his second question was, "What's your favourite meal?" And I thought, hang on a minute, I quite like this. It was just a really basic conversation, and then we started talking more about work. And Paul Sweeney, if you know him, I don't know. He's one of the best sales guys I've ever had the privilege to know, and I learned a huge amount from him in the years after.
Good? What was so good about him?
He listened. Yeah, the analogy is about 2 ears, 1 mouth. He had this amazing way about him where he put people at ease instantly. Yeah, always had a smile on his face. So very approachable. He matched and mirrored really well. So that he made it subconsciously very comfortable to be around. And then he would always hear someone out first before he got the chance to speak. And I've always done this 1, 2, 3 thing where always listen to what someone, whether it's the next 6, 12, 18 months, what is it that they want to do. And guess what, when I then get my opportunity to speak, I will match a mirror with all the challenges that they're looking at solving over the next 6, 12, 18 months. Guess what? I've solved them elsewhere. And he had a really brilliant way of doing that without it looking rehearsed, without it. Yeah, it's just second nature to him. And
so his favourite music question is, he obviously he sold you into joining A&S.
No, he definitely did. And the other thing was he was brilliant on his feet. So he inspired me much more than I'd ever been up to that point. Presenting was something that I kind of liked, but there's an artistry to it. And he taught me really how to stand on my feet and present and hold a room and tell someone what you're going to tell them and tell them what you told them, all that stuff. And he's brilliant.
So tell me about your career there. So you obviously joined A&S.
Yeah, so I joined A&S, and I think that's a really important point actually, is when you join a business, it's club versus coach. So you can either go to a team, you can go to the club that you think is a great club, or you can pick a coach that you'd love to work with. A&S was definitely coach first. So when I met Sweeney, I thought that there is a coach that I could work with. He's going to bring me no end of development. And then when you back that off in terms of due diligence that I'd done on the organisation and their growth pattern up till that point, it was a no-brainer to join. And that was to build out their southern-based business. And
how did that go? Let's talk it through. So you obviously day one.
Day one. It was a tough one because they'd just bought a business called Alpha, which were a big NetApp partner, and they were run by they had a sales manager in London, and they had about 12 salespeople. By the time I managed to get out of Capita, because that was just as hard as doing any business in Capita, it was just getting out when I wanted to leave. By the time I got out, a recruiter, I don't know which one, had taken the sales manager out and 10 sales guys as a team.
Wow.
So they'd all gone to Proact.
Wow, Jesus.
So by the time I joined A&S, the team that I was going in there to develop and manage and grow and was 2 people in a crap office in an underground office in the City of London. So the job morphed into something much bigger than it needed to be.
Wow, and how did you plan that out then? What happened? You go in there day one, you got 2 people?
Yeah, 2 people. And enough counts for 12 people. So we worked really hard. I recruited really hard. I moved us. So I looked for an office that was going to attract people. We had no windows. We were literally underground. And it was right in the heart. It was Fenchurch Avenue, which was great in terms of placement. But there was no natural sunlight. Windows. It was horrible. It was like a legal firm. So I wanted somewhere with loads of windows, loads of glass, somewhere to be proud of, somewhere that represented technology, and somewhere right in the heart of the city. So I walked around with Sweeney in hard hats a lot of the time, looking at office space, and we found one in Monument.
Do you think the environment is key to success?
Yes.
for salespeople and the culture?
Right at the top.
Really?
Yeah, because you need people to buy into the environment and to the culture, and then you want people that are going to come in and add something to that and galvanise the people around them. So lifting the performance of everyone. There's nothing more motivating as a salesperson than sitting next to someone that's working their arse off, that's making a load of calls, because you feel you should be doing it. So just by having people like that in the office, it lifts the people around them, and you get more performance out of everyone.
So you obviously had a successful, I think, 5 years at A&S.
Yeah, 5 years.
And
at
then
A&S.
you decided to leave.
I did. Yeah.
And what prompted the opportunity to leave? Because I think I mentioned to you when I said about people in COVID, there was a lot of people looking for opportunities where they'd either move for technology. It's not just about the money, or maybe the opportunity to have share options or an exit. So what at that point in your career did you think, actually this is time to leave A&S now? Because they were going for a change themselves. They
were going through lots of change. So while I was there, the business had previously changed from Novell into FlexPod, so converged infrastructure stack, and then the team transitioned that business from FlexPod into MSP as well. So we grew it into an MSP, and then from MSP into CSP, so cloud services provider. And it wasn't a long thought process. I'd had probably 2 or 3 gin and tonics. I was out for dinner with Mr. Shannon. We started talking about their famous or infamous burn the boats strategy that they did, and one thing led to another, and I knew that my target was going up. My addressable market was changing. So as a sales leader, and by this point we'd established a pretty big business in the south, which was fantastic and a great fun to be around, but a lot of pressure. But essentially, burning the boats, a bold move in itself, and paid off, and those guys, credit to them. I, as a sales leader, looking at it selfishly, I thought, hang on a minute, I've got a load of pipeline. You're telling me next year all of my addressable market, all of my hopper is effectively empty. I'm all for going for cloud, but are we going to really bet the crown jewels on it? Can't we do both?
Yeah.
And credit to them that they went for it. And
why do you think they didn't? Why do you think they didn't do both? Because they could have done.
We started doing both.
Right.
We started doing both, and what happened was we went from I think it was like 26 or 28 FlexPods in 1 year, and FlexPod, that's big business. One FlexPod we did was about 10 million quid.
Wow. Yeah.
So big business. We went from that to 3. And it was like, right, we either grab hold of this market and we accelerate everything. If we continue to sell both, the view was from the board that would be a distraction. And actually, going back to my earlier point, salespeople have got targets to do. They follow the path of least resistance. They stay within their comfort zones. They're just going to keep selling this crap, right? So it was like, right, well, let's get rid of it. Let's take it out of the equation. Let's use the same salespeople. Let's get them into cloud. Let's convert all of those opportunities that we've got. There's still opportunities. There's still customers. Let's convert them into cloud and execute. So
you moved on into Ideal, but let's talk about your current opportunity, which is UBDS.
There he is.
Got it right. Mouthful. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I'd never heard of this company before.
No.
So how did the opportunity come about, and what made you join them?
Honestly, it's been unbelievable, really. So when I was looking at the market, so I had 3 opportunities at that time. And UBDS, I think it's the way that maybe it was communicated to me or what. It never really featured. It was kind of third. It was not like making up the numbers, for want of a better phrase. And I went through my process with the other 2, and there were some great opportunities out there for people like me, which is great. And then it was my chance to meet the CEO, Dip Patel, and we met on a Teams call, and it was beyond inspiring. As a conversation. Yeah, really, really, honestly, there are moments in anyone's career, and that was one of them for me. Meeting Dip was incredible, and I thought, hang on a minute, this guy is hugely impressive. And going back to my point earlier of picking a coach, I thought there's someone I could meet.
What about him was what was it? What was it that inspired you?
It came across instantaneously that they're a people business.
Right.
It came across instantaneously that they are absolutely laser guided focus on performance, which aligns with my values. And then he was just very easy to get. We just had a really good chat. It wasn't forced. We had a really good conversation. He was really interested to hear about the stuff that I'd done, and it felt like there was a huge amount of value I could bring in terms of some of the questions that they were asking. I knew the answers, and they didn't, because of the lack of commercial leadership. So which is why they were putting in a chief commercial officer. So I had that discussion, and the next meeting, as like in all these things, the next meeting was with 2 or 3 of the board, So the CFO, the Chief Delivery Officer. In fact, it was just those two. And again, two very hugely impressive people that played in position. One was screwing me down on numbers, and the other one was talking to me about people and supply versus demand issues and challenges and how I'd overcome those. And it just added to everything that Dip had done. Dip wasn't a part of that, so we let them just get on with it. And then the next step was a 20-minute presentation where I stood up for 3.5 hours.
What? 3.5 hours? You're joking?
It was 3.5 hours where we chatted, and it was great because it's everything you want a presentation to be. The worst thing you can have with the presentation is where people just are recipients. You want everyone to participate. Yeah. So I don't want to be in broadcast mode. I want everyone just to go into a discussion, and that's what happened. So I got my first slide up, and I just stood there, and we just debated everything. They challenged me, I challenged them. All with positive intent, and so yeah, it was great.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of the Channel Chat podcast, and now a few words from our sponsor.
Channel Chat is brought to you by Convergent Technology. The Convergent team is made up of experienced and innovative IT professionals. Our mission is to disrupt the traditional reseller market, and we want the most aspirational salespeople to join our team as part of our journey. We know IT sales has a bad rep, so we've created a rewarding culture with the best remuneration and career progression in the industry. Check out convergenttechnology.com for more info.
And for the listeners that aren't aware of them, what do the company do? Where do they sit in the market?
Yeah. So hugely impressive business. And this is the reason I wrote them off instantaneously, was because they're only 3 years old. But in those 3 years, they've gone from 0 to 100 people.
Wow.
I say we've gone from 0 to 100 people. It sounds bad saying we because it's a royal we, because they've achieved so much before I was there.
Yeah. You're not taking the credit, Joe.
I'm not taking any credit at all. So they've gone from 0 to 100 people, 20 of which have been hired since I've been there. So we're
5
adding,
months, wow.
Yeah, we're probably more than that actually. We're adding between 5 and 10 people a month. We've gone from 0 to 100 people. We've gone from one of the most highly accredited Microsoft partners in the UK. We are the most highly accredited partner in VMware globally. So globally, which is amazing.
In 3 years?
In 3 years. We've rolled out the biggest SD-WAN in the EMEA for a big central government organisation. That was over 1,100 sites now. Yeah, and modernised all their applications as well. So converting their apps into low-code apps using the Power Platform. And then we're public and private sector, digital transformation organisation. So in terms of exciting businesses to be in, you want to be in the most... As a salesperson, you want to have the most relevant discussions you can have.
Yeah.
And you want to add the most value you can have. This is the first organisation that I think has really focused on delivering functional outcomes for businesses as opposed to talking about technology.
Because we had a bit of a chat over lunch around social impact, sustainability, and I want to get your view on that, because when I speak to companies now, and it's a hot topic over the last 9 months. And quite frankly, I can't work out if it's people that want to be doing the really good thing, or it's just like, actually, sustainability now is a real commercial viable option, because I'm looking at people like doing refurb kit, and I'm thinking they can relicense it, they can put a new maintenance contract around it, or if someone on the grey market, if they move it over here, they can then relicense it again, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, yeah, you talk about sustainability and do the good thing, but is it just it's a new revenue stream? So what's your view on it now? Because it's a hot topic.
It's a really hot topic. Sustainability is a tiny part of the overall CSR. So corporate social responsibility, sustainability for me sits in there. Okay, it's interesting when we talk about market changing. Early days, early in my career, I never talked about it.
No.
By the time I'd got through ABS and Capita, that's kind of one job for me, and I got to ANS. ANS were really big at CSR, so they were big supporters of Manchester charities and children's charities. So we spoke about it there. Didn't really talk about it at Ideal, and then I came to UBDS. And I think obviously there's been a lot of change in the market in that time, but UBDS, I remember when I was doing that my 3.5 hour presentation. And I talked about what my first 30, 40, 50, 60, 90 days looked like. The first 40 or so was about soaking up the organisation. But in my second day, they asked me, they pulled out a bid they're working on for a big police force. and said, right, Joe, we need you to answer these two questions, about 1,000-word answers for each. One was about sustainability, and one was
your
for
second
about
day.
Second day, and the other one was about social value. So I thought, Christ, I don't know anything about the business, so I better go and ask some people, and I did. And I asked around the organisation, and it was amazing the things that I was being told. So what UBDS do. So I'm a critic like you. So I think a lot of businesses greenwash their organisations so that they appear to be sustainable because they think that's what they should be, because they think that's what the market wants them to be, not actually.
It's a great PR thing now, isn't it? It's PR spin. We're supporting Ukraine. We're doing this. It's like, really, are you? Or we're going to drive out to Ukraine and do this? Or we're supporting the local charities, which is great. I'm not saying the actual acts aren't right, but the PR version of it is.
Yeah, no, the reason for doing it.
Yeah, it's better to be looking that we're doing it than actually doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And what struck a chord with me is some of the stuff I found out. Right. So UBDS, what we've done, we've developed an application to use surplus 365 licenses within the local schools. The app was to support a library application. It supports 100,000 kids. We developed that and rolled that out to all the local schools around London. 10% of our staff are enterprise advisors into schools. We've got an academy, a digital academy. We've got a graduate programme. We work with the London Port Authority to clean up the Thames. We give out care packs to the homeless. But the difference is they didn't tell anyone about it. And
which is better, I think.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah,
because
exactly. They mean they actually want to do it.
The motivations, we've got people that even our CEO, he volunteered to be a Met police officer as what they called the special constable. Yeah, special constable for 6 years. You just to find out a bit more about the local community, right? So, but they didn't tell anyone. So if the intentions weren't that way inclined in terms of they were doing it because they felt like they should be, they would have told everyone about it, but they didn't. So that's the first thing I've changed. It's the first thing we do when we go into an organisation now. Back in the old days, we used to start by telling people what we did. So we'd tell them about our products, we'd tell them about our accreditations, we'd tell them about our turnover and our customers. Then that changed in telling people why we did it. So we talk about some outcomes that we can deliver through those things. Now, actually, we've gone one step further and we're talking about what's important to us as an organisation and supporting the local community, the people within that, our employees, and having a positive impact on the environment is important. And we do a lot in that area.
How big a consideration is sustainability in your decision making to actually join a firm? So, for instance, you mentioned your current company. Sounds great. A lot of the stuff they're not publicising, but sounds really, really good, charitable. Would that make a difference between you joining the organisation or not? It wouldn't.
No, I'd love to say it would. But I'd be lying. And I think that's a generational thing.
Yeah.
So I think I'm cut from the cloth that probably you're cut from, where I'm ingrained in the culture. I want to make sure that I'm a part of something special, whether it's a people organisation or delivering something slightly different and delivering some real value. So that's important to me. And then obviously the people around me. So the team I joined is really, really important to me. I think for youngsters coming through, God, that makes me sound old. But for youngsters coming through, they do want a different set of things. And actually, for more importantly, not just candidates coming into the organisation, I think it's important to them. But I think it's a different world now with inflation, with petrol prices, with energy prices soaring. It's impacting younger people, that younger generation, in a different way. It's impacting their families, it's impacting their parents. There's probably a lot more pressure. I'm sure parents are a bit like turning all the lights off around the house. And, so it's put it to the forefront of people's. It's been forced upon them, and I think that just makes it a consideration for them. Whereas it's not necessarily.
Yeah, because I keep on hearing about we're doing Channel Chat Live in 2 or 3 weeks, which will be great. And the team in the office was like, well, we've got to do it for 3 charities. I was like, do we?
Yeah.
Do we have to do it for charity? And obviously I was in the minority, and luckily we are doing it for 3 charities, and we've supported, we've asked the sponsors to do it, and I'm thinking, which is great, and I wanted to make sure it's not some sort of PR bandwagon that we're saying, oh, we're doing this for charity, and we're doing this in X, Y, Z, but actually people internally are passionate about it, which again, it makes me sound like a dinosaur, but I was really surprised about that they're actually, Mark, we really want to raise money for this charity through the Channel Chat Live, and I was thinking, wow, I don't think I'm that passionate about any charity. You know, is it an age thing? I don't know.
No, I think it's an age thing. I don't know. I've been well and truly converted. So one of our senior leadership team, her family actually own a charity called Care in Action, and they're on the ground in the Ukraine getting families out. So we've done a lot like helping those guys out, and just speaking to her about the motivations of the charity, the sacrifice within delivering the charity. There was definitely something more meaningful, and I think I've been a bit of a selfish pig over the years, if I'm honest. But I'm pleased that I've been, with every role comes development. Yeah, and I think that's some of where the development for me has come from already.
Do you think it's been exposed to it as well? Because if you're not, for instance, again going back to Channel Chat Live in 3 weeks, now I've sort of started to look at these charities. I'm thinking, yeah, it's a great cause, but I'd be lying if I would have thought of that idea myself. I would have never thought, oh, actually, we should be doing this for charity. I would be thinking, maybe a commercial point of view, we're not making any money from it. I've got no problem with that, but I would never be thinking it's going to go to charity. So do you think, unless you're actually aware of it, or you've got someone who suggests it, or you've got someone who exposes to it, you just don't get to see what's going on.
I think being a commercial organisation now, it's impossible not to get exposed to it. So with every bid that we respond to, especially in the public sector frameworks, which we're on loads of now, every single bid has a certain amount of scoring for social value impact that you have to prove a certain amount of the TCV, so the total contract value, a percentage of that will go into social value programs. So I think it's right at the forefront. If organisations, customer organisations, are driving that agenda, then obviously we're being exposed to it at a headline level, which then just cascades down into the teams.
Yeah, so it's impossible. It's impossible to get away from now because you're almost being demanded from the customers.
Yeah, I think at headline level, organisations want to do business with ethical organisations, and now candidates or employees want to be a part of an ethical organisation as well. So doing their bit, and that's a huge change over the last even 10 years.
Yeah, you've got to the role you are now. You started in lead gen. What advice would you give someone who would want to emulate the career that you've done? Because you mentioned right at the beginning of the show that you said you actually did want to get to the C-suite, even when you were doing lead gen. So what we're talking 17 years ago, or whenever it is, 20 years ago. So
25 years.
So you obviously had that thought process. So how can someone emulate your career if they're actually starting in lead gen today and they want to try and get to the role that you've got?
Yeah, I would. First and foremost, the most important thing is goal setting. So I think you have to have a goal. You have to have a goal. And I'm not talking about hitting a target. Hitting a target is not a goal. That's your job. That's what you get paid a salary for. When I talk about goal setting, it's where do you want to be in the next 5-10 years? I remember I did an NLP course, neuro-linguistic programming, in like 2001 maybe. So a year after I joined. And there was a moment in that where we did this thing. It all sounds like hocus pocus, but it stays with me forever. And we were doing this visualization in terms of where we wanted to be in the next 10, 15 years and understanding the smells. And we would close our eyes and we had to vision it, think about the sounds that you could hear. We were pinching our earlobe at the time. It's a load of nonsense, right? So I don't believe in any of that sort of stuff. But even now, when I just did it, it floods back. So in terms of that goal and where I wanted to be. So I think knowing why you get out of bed in the morning is one of the most important things to do, and then everything else will take care of itself. If you do the right things, you're disciplined.
Yeah, have you ever done anything like, actually, when you talked about that, have you ever done anything like vision boards and goal mapping and stuff like that? Because I remember doing that. I remember a similar time, Brian Main, he did a course on sort of goal mapping, and I sort of drew out that I wanted a Gerrards Cross office, and I had an office in Walton at the time, and then subconsciously you almost work yourself towards it without knowing that you're doing it if you've actually got that vision. So is that something you'd recommend for people as well?
I definitely would, and that's what I got from Paul Sweeney.
Right.
So Sweeney wrote out he wrote a cheque to himself for £1 million, and he framed it, he put it on the wall of his office. That was his vision board. So that's what drove him. And then he was big into vision boards, and he was big into life coaching. So life coaching is in the life coaching wheel. So we used to do a huge amount on that, and actually they invested in me. A&S, they used to have a psychoanalyst guy that was called himself a verbal martial artist or something. So he honestly, but where he was Marmite. So he rubbed people up the wrong way, and he really upset quite a lot of the people within A&S. But he gave me a huge amount in terms of my self-development and thinking about things just slightly differently and anchoring everything to a goal.
When interviewing, and you've done a lot of interviewing over salespeople over the years, how can a candidate really impress you, Joe?
Interview me.
Probe you, interview you.
Genuinely, yeah. I know when someone's impressed me when I start pitching. So
you're trying to convince them to join.
When I'm pitching them, yeah, and the time I start pitching someone, I'm going to get, hopefully I don't get a load of calls now. My phone's going to go off, just teaching what to do. If someone interviews me, and the advice I give anyone, so any young, when I've worked with younger people and they're looking for advice on interview tactics and stuff, I've always said, interview them. If you go in with the mindset that you want to, it's not you trying to impress them. You're not on a stage doing a song and a dance for them, and actually you're going in with a peer-to-peer discussion, not just to see if you can add value to them, but see if they can add value to you. Not in all the ways that we talked about, but I'm talking about progressing your career. You know, are they the right place for you and your personality? So go in armed with questions to understand their organisation, what their intent is as an organisation, where they're going to take it, how they're going to take you with them, what development they're going to give you, how they're going to inspire you to do more. Then I know that that's the right person.
Do you think hiring managers like that? Because it's interesting you say that, because I completely agree. I think if you're going into an interview, you should be interviewing them. You should have 5 or 6 questions prepared, and it's about them convincing you as you convincing them it's the right fit, or hopefully getting a mutual 100%. Right fit that it's suitable, so you can both bring to the table. I still get a lot of hiring managers using it as like them trying to impress the company. And what I tried to say to them is that now the candidates market is shifted. You've got candidates now that they've got 20, 30 companies trying to seduce them and trying to get them to join. And the hiring manager still thinks that they should turn up and to impress them.
They're bad hiring managers. No, honestly, I'm not joking. They are bad hiring, because sales especially is fundamentally about building a relationship. It's about putting someone at ease quickly. It's about asking really killer questions, and it's about qualification. And then a close at the end, right? That's sales. A bit more to it than that, but you know what I mean. So if someone's coming in for a sales role with me, I expect the same. You know, it might be in an hour, it might be in across 90 minutes, but I expect someone to come in and give me a bit of dump about them. They should know a lot about me and the organisation, and they should be mirroring what they can bring to what we need throughout, and telling me about where they've done it before, and asking me about what I can do to help, or asking me for some advice, you know, within that, and then closing me to a next stage. If they do those things well, then they've got all the attributes to add a load of value to you and your organisation. So why? It's just showcasing. Yeah.
Do you think now that, you know, candidates they have got so many more options now? They can go out on LinkedIn. Every company's recruiting. Do you think, you know, what sort of questions and what sort of things should the candidates consider now when looking at companies? Because companies are very good at presenting they're fantastic. They're putting PR about how great their culture is, etc. So how can the candidates qualify if it is the right opportunity? So if I'm meeting you, I'm thinking, how can I qualify if Joe, if he's the right manager, it's the right industry, it's the right role? How can I do that?
Yeah, I don't think there's, because to try and determine a question now, it's almost like insincere. It has to come in the moment.
Yeah.
So because a question is the worst thing someone can do. They can prep such stuff, but if they go in scripted, it's bad, because actually what happens is you stop listening, and you start thinking about when you're going to get your next question in.
Yeah.
And actually your question should be the result of a piece of information that's given to you in real time. So you should be good enough to think on your feet, but you should go in there with a clear objective. So I don't do a meeting or a call or anything without identifying what the objective is from that call.
Well, you have one objective when you go to a meeting?
Yeah.
Just one. So if you've got a customer meeting, I'm trying to establish that.
Kind of, yeah. So I might say to a team of people before, right, guys, we are not trying to close them in this meeting. So it's not to a hard close. All we're trying to get them to is an on-site workshop, or all we're trying to get them to. So we're trying to guide someone. So through a sales cycle is from introduction to eventuality of a purchase order, right?
Yeah.
If we can get all the right people in at the right time, showcase the right skills at the right time, and build credibility all the way through that process, That's when we guarantee the outcome. And I expect exactly the same in everything that I do. So everything is thought out and planned out with an end goal in sight. It's.
What's the biggest turn off, Joe, for an interview? Has anyone done anything you think,
turning up unprepared? So I cannot stand it when I say, right. Usually, in fact, 99 times out of 100, I'll say, so what do you know about UBDS or whoever I've worked for? If they haven't done their homework, I've already made my decision.
You'd literally rule someone out.
I've cut interviews in 15 minutes. Say, look, do you know what?
Harsh, Joe. Wow.
Well, because it's a waste of time.
No, it is.
It's not just a waste of my time; it's a waste of their time. And if I know, I know, and there's no getting around it. So I'll say, look, I'm really sorry. And sometimes I like it because actually it creates an objection. And as you know, a huge part of sales is objection handling. So if I can create an objection, they can handle it and turn it around from that point. Then we're onto something really quite powerful. If they just accept it, then I know they were wrong in the first place.
We said over lunch, you've obviously taken the job, you're obviously really busy, you're going to be taking on some people, etc. So my last question for you is, in your current role, what is your aspirations for the next 6 months? And also, where do you see the market and the opportunity going for?
So I know where the market, I'd like to think I know where the market's going. So we run 4 practices. We've got digital advisory, cloud transformation, data analytics, automation, and cloud managed services. Data analytics and automation, so unsiloing data, sticking some intelligence on it to give us good insights. We live in this data-rich but insight-poor world. If we can get to a point where we're extracting value from people's data and dashboarding it and presenting it in a meaningful way, allowing them to make better business decisions, then that's adding real value. And that's where a lot of the headcount's going into that practice, and we're making a real difference, especially across local, regional governments and some central government.
Okay.
So that's where the market's going.
What about your plan? your plan for your team?
My plan for my team. So look, the business did everything. So we're about £15 million we'll do this year. The organisation has done all of that in the last 3 years without any salespeople, which is
no salespeople at all.
No salespeople at all. In fact, our biggest value within the organisation, we have values, mission, purpose, all that stuff, as you'd expect. The biggest value that we will always talk about is our reputation is everything. And our reputation is everything because it served us so well. So we've got this amazing reputation for technical excellence and delivery capability. And that is where we've won all of our business. So we're very much an inbound. So people come to us to guarantee on time and budget digital transformation because they know that we're a safe pair of hands for that, which is a really powerful place.
Yeah.
Now, I've been brought in to say, look, all of that stuff is phenomenal, but it only gets you so far. So it's not sustainable because actually we need to now start really growing at a faster rate. So imagine what we could do now with a sales team. So we're putting in client principles. We're going to manage our customers with a bit more commerciality around it instead of just talking about phenomenal outcomes that we can bring them and deliver their projects on time and budget. It's someone to sit there with the customer and ask them how they're doing and ask them what's next.
Do you think that will change the culture? When a company's had a fantastic reputation for delivery and they haven't had salespeople, bringing in salespeople now, which has got to expand the message. And you're right. It can only get you so far. Reputation and referral, great, but you still got to go and tell everyone about it. Do you think that's going to change the culture? Is that
That's what we want. So we don't want to change the culture for the worse. Change equals opportunity.
Yeah.
So if you've got a change mindset, you see opportunity in change. If you've got a closed mindset, you see risk in change. Yeah, and we're very entrepreneurial, and we deliver great outcomes. And it's wow, imagine the positive impact, the positive change that can bring us as an organisation in terms of capturing data at the right time, being able to really manage MI through the business, being able to do all the things that we've done up to this point, but be able to predict when the next one's coming and make sure it's scalable and industrialize it, make sure it's predictable and repeatable and all of that stuff, right?
Well, as I said, I've never heard of UBDS, but I'm excited to see the journey. So hopefully it's going to be a good year for you. So thanks so much for your time, Joe.
Thanks very much, mate.